Right, hello everyone. Today I got an extra special treat with one of the first cars that I handmade a while ago, which is the Morgan 3-wheeler. But this is really completely built from the ground up. I'll tell you a little bit the history of the car. It's basically when Tamaya came up with the dancing rider, and I thought like, ooh, I liked the idea of a free-wheel vehicle, free-wheel car. So I started looking online to see what was available, because I was not really crazy about the dancing rider. And I realized, like, aside from the Camtech Reliance, like the Banger chassis that they have, there's basically no free-wheel chassis available anywhere. And the other thing that I wanted was to have two wheels in the front and one-wheel drive, which was not the case with the Dancing Rider or the Camtech for that matter. And so I started, designing the car. And well, let's see what I have now, and then I'll try to go back in time a little bit and then explain how did I arrive at that. So that's the car as it is now. It's fairly long. I would say it's probably more of a 1/8 scale than a 1/10 scale. It's one-wheel drive, brushed motor, using a 23 turn, 60 amp brushed ESC from Hobby Wing. The wheels in the front right now, those are the Hoosier. They're for the Slash. It's the drag wheels, front wheels, and the rear wheel, it's from the FGX, from the 3wheeler FGX, the F1. Alright, so it's basically a pan chassis. It's a pan car chassis. I have pretty big long end. The articulation is almost at the center of the car, and you'll notice that it doesn't articulate left and right. It only pivots in this direction. And the reason why is just because it's only a single wheel at the back. When in the corner, the force would push the chassis to the side, and then the chassis would catch the asphalt or the surface of the road, and then the back would just slide out. So this way I have the articulation to keep grip, especially I'm running it on a very bumpy track. So I keep a good grip at the back, and I have good braking and so on, but I don't have that problem in the corner when the chassis touches the floor and then makes the car spin. And so let's see how the transmission is built. So you see this is from the 3wheeler, from their touring car, the motor mount. It goes to the same car, the 3wheeler, the pulley and spur mount. And then the pulley, I'm using a belt, and I'm using the pulley from the car. And the axle that's over here, I mounted it, I don't know if you can see the metal part here, those are actually skateboard bearings. Enormous skateboard bearings. I have two of them here, and the reason why I use that is because the axle that I designed to have the pulley and the wheel attachments are all 3D printed, so it couldn't be small, otherwise it wouldn't be durable. And it's designed in a few different parts, which means that if something breaks, I don't have to replace or reprint the entire axle. And so yeah, that's the transmission. It's then linked to this is from a Serpent touring car. A very, very, very soft spring, because once again I'm running it on a very bad bumpy track. I have some bracing to avoid the transmission from moving, so the belt is always in the same position. So the bike is completely solid. And then here is where the shorty lipo mounts, beneath here. And here I would have the receiver normally. And the front here, if you can see, this block which I mounted the servo into is basically it's the rear end of a touring car. 3wheeler, I forgot the name. It's the cheap 3wheeler car. And I have the arms from it, and then the upper part, it's the rear end of the FGX, is the transmission, the top of the transmission box from the FGX. And there were so much mounting point that I could have a new geometry, and so I could mount those suspension like that in the front. And so this way I have independent suspension in the front, and that's the chassis. The body that I use, so I've designed a few bodies before. It used to have a 3D printed body, which was the chassis used to be a little bit shorter as well. And finally I found the RJ Speed Sprinter body, which is a really nice little sausage looking body that they use for their Sprinter class, for the pan car. And I just modified it a bit. I had a Tamiya driver inside. I 3D printed some side pipes, super shark teeth. And so with this body, the lightness of it is it's really fun to drive. It's not really slow, it's pretty fast. It's extremely scary to drive because it's kind of unpredictable when it starts to get bumpy at the back, just because of the fact that there's only a single wheel at the back. And it's a pretty big car, but it's a really good car to drive, and once you get into the swing of it, it's really a lot of fun, and it's actually drivable on the local track. It's not gonna win any competition anytime, but yeah. And so the old car started originally with, I used to have a single pan with, that's where the rear wheel and the transmission would have been, with the shorty lipo here. The servo was on the front, so you see it was shorter. It was about maybe 4 or 5 cm shorter, and I used Tamiya F103 front end, so it was very rigid. There was basically no swing whatsoever, just the little movements of the 2 little F1 spring in the front. And I was using similar wheels, but just I 3D printed the wheels, and I was using the Super Gripper buggy wheels from Tamiya for the front, which are similar to that. Those are just, you know, better, a bit cushier, and so on. And well, the thing is, it was okay on good tracks, but it would turn over absolutely all the time. The chassis would catch to the side. It was lacking suspension, so the back would be very, very bouncy. And once the back gets bouncy, you have no clue how the car is going to track, because that single wheel, this car never had a problem of oversteering or understeering. It's the traction has always been good, and that's kind of been the problem for it. It's like you need to link the behavior of the car to how good the traction is. So that was the original one. So you can imagine, I have some pictures. I'll link to a blog I have on the web store, when you can see the different iteration of the cars, I think the construction of it and so on. And so that's it for that car, I think. Yeah, I was thinking for a little while about, like, you know, making it as a serious project, but there's just so many parts involved from manufacturers and so on, and it's just, yeah, it's not really quick, it's not really practical. But I think that's just for the look of it. That's probably one of the favorite RC I have in my collections. And so, yep, here you go. That's my Morgan freewheel 1.8 RC. Alright, see you next time, stay safe.